This episode of Angles is brought to you by Richmond Personal Injury Attorneys. Expect high-level communication, transparency, and cutting-edge technology to keep your case moving. Expect a legal team that's laser-focused and moves fast to get the results you deserve. When the unexpected happens, expect Richmond Vona. Learn more at richmondvona.com, 192 Seneca Street, Buffalo, New York. Welcome to Angles, the podcast where we dig into the stories behind impactful people and explore the sharp turns, daily decisions, and defining moments that shape how they got to where they are and how they keep moving forward. I'm John Richmond, and every week I sit down with guests who are building bold, meaningful lives and careers in Buffalo and beyond. If you enjoy these conversations, please hit follow, subscribe, drop a comment, or share the episode. It's a simple way to help us grow with the community and keep these stories coming. What if everything you've been taught about health, healing, and performance was only half the story? Today on Angles, we're diving deep into the world of movement, mindset, and modern wellness with Matt Meyer, a health professional who's worked with everyone from the Buffalo Bills and Bandits to everyday people searching for real healing. Matt spent decades challenging the traditional medical model and helping people with movement, body work, and mindset. It's a fascinating look at how we think, recover, and perform at every level. Let's get into it. All right, Matt Meyer, what's going on, man?
Nothing. John, thanks for having me on, brother.
I love this, man. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I think we're going to cover a lot of interesting topics, but, I was like, all right, I'm like, where do we kick it off? And I'm like, I've never actually, I'll say this, you're a man of many talents when it comes to health and wellness, and I've never actually really asked you, like, how you got involved in this. So I would love to kind of hear, like, why health and wellness is so important to you, when you realize that, and kind of talk a little bit about your journey to how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was always digging for truths, even when I was little, like reading books I didn't understand, all that kind of stuff. When I got out of high school, I was, basically lost. I studied martial arts. I ran nightclub security. I was studying philosophy and world religion. Basically I was a sociologist in training. So I was just out trying to experience life. I worked at a drug rehab center. And then I had the opportunity to move down to Tampa and run a huge nightclub there. So, by night I was, throwing people out of nightclubs, and by day, reading books on philosophy and studying martial arts. But there was always this piece of, I was always really interested in medicine, healing, but from more of an alternative standpoint.
Right.
Even early on, I kind of realized that centralized medicine was falling short, and this is back in the 90s. And then I just, the universe, whatever timing it come, and these really cool people have gotten brought into my scope. One was a roommate of mine who was in a really bad car accident and had gone through the whole medical model. And the only thing that was really helping him, he was seeing this like trainer / massage therapist. There was a chiropractor there. So I went with him to a couple visits, and it was amazing. Like, he had actually, this is kind of right before like the whole like oxy thing had taken place. So it wasn't huge at this point, and he was like, this is what helps me, and he was a big bodybuilder guy, and, he's got a therapist in there doing like stretching and movement and stuff that I really wasn't familiar with. At that time I was kind of training like a big meathead, right, at the gym, just like a bodybuilder, non-bodybuilder. And then they had this like tiny girl in there that was doing like just this body work and I was just like, whoa, I didn't even know that existed. So when I had moved back from Tampa back to Buffalo, I was like, all right, this is what I want to do. And by this time I was already like 26 years old. So I was like, I didn't want to go the traditional physical therapy route. Chiropractic school was too long, too expensive, all these different things. So I started to kind of formulate like, all right, what can I do helping people outside of, a medical practice, maybe in a gym, because I was very comfortable in a gym. So I had sought out and met a couple amazing mentors, physical therapists, some chiropractors, and they all kind of gave me the same advice. They're like, Matt, they're like, we have enough of us in the field. We need somebody that we can like send people to when they're done with us. So I enrolled in a medical massage therapy program and went through that program. And through that, then I just started learning as much as I could. After that, I enrolled at SUNY Empire State, which is like a self-study program, and I basically designed my own program.
Wow.
And I was basing it on, there was this sports therapist degree that was in Europe that really wasn't here yet. And it was heavy in manual therapy and heavy on exercise. And I kind of formulated this program through that. And the cool thing about that program is you actually seek mentors and study under them, and that's your class. So at that point, it was perfect because it was all the things that I needed to learn right there. I maxed out all my student loans, which I actually just paid off about a year ago.
That's
because
amazing.
I also realized that what you learn in school is just the surface. And I was like, there were all these certifications, all these things. And I was like, I need to take those. So I just went deep in. And I was out in California, I was in Toronto, back down in Florida, and just studying all these things. And then I opened up my first practice in 2002 inside a gym. And I had to really claw and kind of scratch my way into, because people didn't really know what I did. They're like, wait, you're not a PT, but you're not a chiropractor, but you're not kind of like a normal, you're not a trainer. So again, I had some amazing mentors at some different medical groups, and I spent time with them, and then they just started slowly sending people to me. And I was just helping them outside of the scope of like insurance and, centralized medicine. If someone came in and, they had some neck issues, and I realized, wait, your ankle's kind of jacked, I could look at that. In the regular world, that would have been another 30 days. They would have had to go back to the doctor to get a script. So I was always kind of seeing the writing on the wall with that. And I just went, headfirst into learning everything I could about the body and kind of, I guess, this like holistic health principle. So, guys like Paul Chek and were really instrumental in kind of building this holistic program where people came in and I was going to ask them questions about how they slept, what their diet was like, what their relationships were like. And also, around that time, I had really wanted to work with athletes. Mm-hmm. That was really like my focus. I wanted to work with athletes. So I was also scratching and clawing to be able to get in to work with athletes. And it slowly started with the Bandits. So this will be my 16th season coming up. So it was 2006, I believe, 2008. And I got a job with the Bandits. And again, they were kind of like, they just kind of threw me in and they were like, we don't really know what you do, but you're going to help us. And then as soon as I started working with them, I was like, all right, what's next in the hierarchy? The Bills. So I started sending in letters, calling, and, in professional sports too, they're very siloed. You really have to like either know somebody to get in. And I just was, really, really tenacious and wrote letters and calls. And like literally one day I'm just driving and somebody from the Bills called me, and that was like 11 years ago. And the athletic trainer said the same thing. He's like, I'm looking at your CV. There's a bunch of letters after your name. I don't know what you do, but we need you.
That's awesome.
So I've been working with those guys for a while, and I still have operated my private practice. I worked with UB Sports Medicine. I worked with UB Neurosurgery, and then I closed during the pandemic. I closed my office at the gym, and I opened up this nice little studio that you've been into in Williamsville, and so that's how I operate, man. I see all different types of people. I mean, in a day, I'll see somebody that was in a car accident. I'll see a professional athlete. I'll see, a musician. So my really job is just helping people from like all spectrums of life. So movement, body work, and then over the last couple of years, I got into something called the Lifted Method, which is mindset coaching, which is pretty cool. So the 3 M's, and that's what we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're the guy who, I was introduced to you through someone whose name we're not going to mention because we're not going to give him any street cred on here.
No.
Now I look at you as a guy who's like, if I don't know exactly what's going on, but I just know something hurts amongst like a million other things that you do, I go to you. And you have like this way of just like figuring it out. And then not only that, but like prescribing like methods to get it better. And it works where like the traditional method doesn't always work that well. And, I was thinking about this with like now in this day and age, a lot of people will talk about like we'll call it like a disillusionment or mistrust in like traditional medicine in a lot of ways, right? You're hearing about it all the time now, but you like got on that train long before anybody was really talking about that. What led you to say to really start questioning things? Is it just like being a generally curious person that I know that you are, or did something happen?
Nothing like personally happened. Um, I was, you know, having kind of these connections into the medical world and the medical field. I was just seeing, so many people fall by the wayside. And it was really hearing stories. I'd have somebody come in that had, a back injury. And usually, at least back then, people sometimes they wouldn't find me for like a couple years. And like hearing their story of how they've been pushed through, which, like it or not, it is a sick care system. The sick care the system is set up to manage illness and sickness and disease. It is not to make you healthier. Now, we need that, absolutely. And I'll give this credit to, like I said, one of my mentors, Paul Check, who said, there's a need for it, but true health care is outside of the hospital and outside of most doctors' offices. And there's a time and a place for them, but I think for a long time, people leaned on their doctors and stuff to have all the answers. And frankly, they're not trained in that. They're not trained to talk about nutrition and exercise. And, a common answer for a long time was someone would come in and say, oh, my shoulder hurts. And it would be like that cartoon. The doctor would say, well, you're 60. Why are you working out?
Yeah.
And I get that all the time. So it was just a lot of it was really just all these anecdotal inputs of people talking about their journey through healthcare, and then also having all these different people around, physical therapists and chiropractors and acupuncturists and stuff that were really they were the ones that were doing a lot of the good work to get them where they went. So that was another important thing that right when I started, I was like, I wanted to have a Rolodex. I don't think people have Rolodexes anymore, but I wanted to have the best people that I could refer to. And I always ran my practice with this in mind. It is truly the client comes first. And
Yeah.
I also use the word client, not patient, because clients are part of the journey. I'm not doing something to them. It's not passive, it's active. So the minute that I could say, you know what, I have so and so that's going to help you better, I would refer them immediately.
Yeah.
And building those networks of people is amazing because then I can send you to see so and so, and because I built a rapport with them, they send them back and they'll text me, "Hey Matt, I did what I did. This person's doing better. Back to you." So it became this really nice system, this cycle of it wasn't just about sending people away, but it was like having them come back. And I would always tell them, if I don't see you again, that means I did my job because you're better.
Yeah. No, I mean, like that, I'll tell you, like we see something similar in our industry where sometimes we'll have people call us and say, hey, I have this, I was in this accident and I have this case with so and so, but I just don't like what's going on. Or I'm starting to feel like this person maybe doesn't have my best interest in mind or have the skill set to do this. And sometimes it's like, we're like, well, who is this person? And they give us a name and I'm like, I haven't heard of that person. And then you look and you realize that's really not their specialty. Like that's not what they do all day, every day. They're just holding on to the client because they're trying to make some money, but in reality, it's not in the best interest of the client for like a number of reasons. And I think it's just important. I wish more people would think like that because like you said, right? Like in this world, if you ultimately do what's really right by somebody and you form these great relationships with other people, it's always going to come back to you tenfold.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, in all honesty, that took a very long time, a very long time. I really held true to that, and that meant very often sending money out the door.
Right.
But it was like that was the right thing to do. And and now I built up a practice where I have a constant flow of people that come in and they're looking for help and things like that. So it paid off. But for people that are just getting into the business, that's sometimes it's tough to swallow, right? Because it's like you're sending this person away and you're like, oh man, that could be X amount of dollars over the next 3 months. And you have to hold true to your values, whatever those are.
Yeah, especially when you're building a business, especially like a service business where you're actually trying to help people. There's a saying, right? Like, be a missionary, not a mercenary.
Yes,
And oftentimes, being a missionary, you're not going to have that instant gratification. But then over time, your business will actually be more valuable than if you were just merely a mercenary trying to make as much money as fast as possible. It's like you got to play the long game, especially in medicine or health and wellness. I mean, you would hope that people are in it because they actually do want to help people, and
for
and
sure.
they see that.
And Buffalo's always an interesting place, being able to travel, you know, I spent a lot of time so close to Toronto. I spent a lot of time training up in Toronto and other places. And Buffalo was always kind of behind the eight ball. And, I'd go up to Toronto for a weekend and I was realizing it was like, man, the PTs and the chiros and the trainers and the doctors, they were really like working together. And I'd come back and cross the border and I was like, I'd be all excited and I'd like, reach out to these people and it'd just be like crickets. But it has changed, which is nice. So it's changed, it's evolved. And now I think we're in a way better place. I used to sometimes have to send practitioners like up to Canada to get certain kinds of treatment. Now, we have a really nice, I guess, supply of different types of practitioners that practice all different modalities. So that's been really nice as well.
Why do you think? Well, first off, I agree with you because again, I see it in my business where like it's catching up and it's gotten a lot better than it used to be. But you see a lot of like businesses, I guess in all sectors, being a little bit behind where they should be, and we could talk all day about why that is. But I guess more importantly, um, you were talking about how like, okay, if your shoulder was injured, they're going to tell you shouldn't work out because you're too old to work out. Um, I still think you see a lot of that in this day
There
and
is.
age. Like, there's more people like you out there, which is amazing. But I still think the majority of medical practitioners are really kind of stuck with that traditional mindset of, like you said, we're gonna manage this. We're gonna, go to the chart, so to speak, and prescribe this medication or this traditional form of therapy. And if it doesn't work, it's kind of like, well, what do we do? Why do you think that is? Is this like do you tie it back to like the insurance industry or why do you think that is?
I mean, the insurance industry is driving healthcare. And, that has happened over from the capture of, pharmaceutical companies and big pharma, pharmacy benefit managers. And also too, and this is kind of got a double-edged sword, is like this super specialization of practitioners, right? And it's like now if you hurt your leg and you go to the orthopedic, they're like, well, I'm a hip guy. I
Yeah.
want you to go see the knee guy. And then by the time you get to the knee guy, it's like, well, I actually think this is an ankle. And some of that is great because now, like, if you do need an ankle surgery, you have people that are really good at it. But what happens is there's lost in translation. And then as a patient or client, it's frustrating, and it happened just this week. I was working with a client and she insisted that she had a labral tear in her hip and she wanted to see the orthopedic. So I said, of course, I said, this is probably what you're going to get, and that's fine. So went to the appointment, went to the orthopedic, and and by the way, the actual surgeons will never see you unless you either know somebody
Yeah, no
or
way.
now you're seeing, which is a whole nother issue. And she came back and she's like, "Oh, you were right." Not only did they kind of just tell her this, they actually kind of totally didn't even touch what we found out what the problem was eventually. And physical therapy and stuff is the same way. And I work with some amazing physical therapists. Some are cash-based, some are in the system, but they now have to see 4 or 5 people an hour. That's why there's physical therapy assistants. That's why there's physician's assistants. It is to be able to load up, get as many people through as possible. And a lot of that is driven from insurance and the reimbursement rates and things like that. So I think the knowledge, the nice thing is that in the age we're living in, we do have instant knowledge, which again could be a hindrance, but you can do a lot of research now. You can go through some of this. And honestly, a lot of what I do is helping people is almost like I'm kind of helping them figure out like who they should see next.
Right.
Do I need to see a neurosurgeon, or do I need to see an orthopedic, or should I go to a chiropractor or a physical therapist, or should this? So I've been lucky because I have a really nice base of people in the community. So a lot of times I'm actually kind of helping coach people through like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. You should probably go this route to help them get through some of the giant tumbleweed of healthcare that's today.
Yeah, that's so valuable because it's just so confusing. I mean, what you're alluding to, right? It's like, especially with AI, but there's you can go down so many rabbit holes and learn
Yes.
at such a greater rate that you ever could in the history of the world, and that can be great, but it also can, like you
Yes.
said earlier, it could be a double-edged sword because then you're going down these rabbit holes and
For
you're
sure.
not totally understanding the information, and it's like you need we'll call it like a quarterback to say,
Yeah.
hey, I understand the system. I understand the game. I have all these different tools in my toolbox. Let me try to help navigate you through this.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. And I think some of the best practitioners in the area, that's what they do, and they help, they help the patients through that and figure out like, you need this and you need this, and also by the way, it's if you went about it this way, you can probably get into an appointment better or something like that. So I mean, I'm fortunate because I kind of know the system, but it's scary for people that are, either if they're suffering from chronic pain, like they're already in a shit show,
Yeah.
and then trying to navigate the system and they're getting bounced back from, this. I had a client not too long ago that had been suffering from some like autoimmune things. And they literally had seen 9 different doctors, and none of them gave them the right answer. They're seeing an endocrinologist and then this person says, well, I'm an endocrinologist, but I don't study this. And it's like, it's super frustrating. Then they get into, it's like healing. I always tell people you have to create whatever you have going on. If it's mental, physical, emotional, you have to create the right healing environment to get better, right? Just like your garden. And when you're getting bounced back and forth, you're going to appointments and you're being overlooked, you're being looked at like you're crazy. That is not creating a good environment. That's creating the opposite of that. So now it's like they're trying to work their way through the system and they're in more stress now trying to find help.
Yeah, and those appointments are all 60 to 90 days apart because you can't get in with anybody and
For
you're
sure.
living with this issue, and
Yes.
and then like you're saying, like it could be a physical issue, and then it's being compounded by like the mental and emotional anxiety and like the angst because like you're like, nobody understands me. They think I'm crazy. Like I like somebody I'm close to has had like GI stomach issues for a long time, and like he'll go to somebody and they're like, take this pill, and like it doesn't work. And then he goes back 90 days later because he can't get in. And they're like, well, you sure it didn't work? Like, well, try this other pill. Or like, and then, yeah, it sucks.
It's a frustrating, it's a vicious cycle. And I wish, I always say like, it's great talking about the problems, but like, what's the solution?
Right.
The solution is to find me. I'm only kidding.
Not
Because
really.
the problem is that the system is broken. And this fits into a lot of boxes right now. This fits into politics. it's not the left or the right. The system is fundamentally broken. So whatever you plug in there, you're going to get the same result.
For sure.
Doing research and, reaching out to people, talking to other people is actually very helpful, because a lot of times you'll find somebody that says, oh, you know what? I had this and I went to this person. So, you have to put the work in. Fortunately or unfortunately, that's just the nature of what it is today.
Do you find, it's interesting because you work with the Bandits, you work with the Bills, and these are massive organizations that I got to imagine we'll call it have to have some red tape, like, within them, because of the duties of the players and the leagues that they're a part of, and like collective bargaining agreements at times and all this kind of stuff. How do you struggle at all with like your kind of, like, we'll call it holistic approach, like when dealing with athletes within these organizations?
That's definitely a thing. I learned very quickly early on that you have to play really nice in a sandbox.
Right. Yeah.
And if you play nice, it'll be okay. And yes, there's times where I would, clinically like to do XYZ, but I also know that there's a lot of people with eyes on these guys and girls. So it comes down to the communication. And, luckily, I've always been really good at that. I've had players that have, a lot of these players too, they have practitioners that they work with from all over the country, sometimes all over the world. So if I'm working with a player and they have, they're under the care of a therapist or doctor somewhere, I'm like, let me talk with them.
Right.
Usually just talking with them, and this even goes true with other clinicians in the area, other physicians. Usually if you just talk to them, introduce yourself and be like, hey, my job here is to get this person better or to increase their performance. And it's like, I just want to make sure that I'm not stepping on your toes. I want to make sure that I'm following like the guidelines. Typically that does it. And actually I've created a lot of friendships from people around the country because of that type of communication, and which is pretty cool. So, and most, 99% of these people, they want their person to get better.
Right.
So I think it's more of just having the, kind of that open communication, be able to reach out, drop the ego. When you're working with these teams, especially, these million dollar athletes, you have to leave the ego at the door. And another mentor said, like, again, like the number one goal is player health and performance. And this is true for anybody too. If I have an 80-year-old client that walks in, the goal is her health and performance. That performance might be she wants to go hiking and pick up her grandkids, but it's like, let's see what team's involved, if any. Let's try to reach out to the team and say, hey, this is what I do. How can I help this? 9 times out of 10, it's looked on and it's received as like, oh, wow, this is great.
So, all right. So like okay, let me ask you this. So whether it's like an athlete or just a regular person like me coming off the street to come work with you.
You're not regular, man.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I guess some people would say like I'm actually more like probably weird, but I
You're
actually,
like regular. So all the regular people, John, and then everybody else.
Yeah. I wear weird as a badge of honor. Just
I love
to put
weird,
that
man.
out there.
That's why we're friends.
Exactly. Like regardless of who it is, but like maybe it's more relatable for people to hear like, okay, I have a job, I have a family, whatever, and I have some issues, and I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. It's not like I know I tore my ACL, like something's wrong, and they come to you. Do you have like a method by which you work with this person to figure out like, hey, what's going on? What's our best plan forward? That type of thing. Because you just have so many tools. I'm curious how you know like when to deploy them or how to kind of figure out like where to start with this person and how to get them going in the right direction.
For sure. And I mean, there's a saying in the biz of like, if you're not assessing, you're guessing. So the first thing I do with people is honestly like, even over the last couple of years, like this has changed. When someone comes in and I've never met them before and they're kind of in that stuck place, I don't even charge them for the first visit. I basically say, we're going to come in, we're going to sit down, and we're going to talk. And I'm going to go into their history of what kind of injuries have you had? What kind of practitioners have you seen? And I'll tell people this over the phone. I said, look, at the time after we have our first little meeting, if I feel and you feel like this is a good fit, then we'll move forward. And then we get into more. So really the first appointment is we're talking. You know, the average GP appointment, I believe, is 6 minutes long. Typically, not even with the physician.
Yeah, they don't do anything.
We talk sometimes, you know, I'll block an hour time. Sometimes it's not that long. And I just say, let's talk about it. I'll take some notes and kind of get a plan. And I'll say, all right, based on kind of our talk, this is what I think we should do. And then we can talk about like, you know, I'm going to look at a movement assessment, right? I'm going to see how their body moves. If we're talking about a knee, I'm like, all right, we're going to look at how you squat, how you lunge, how you hinge, all these things. And then we're going to do some, you know, hands-on assessments, more like what they call like an orthopedic evaluation, you know, actually feeling the body, feeling the joint and stuff. And then from there, yeah, it's really, I mean, the body is so much more complex than a car, but I do like the analogy of like kind of being a mechanic and having lots of different tools and saying, all right, you know, first we're going to be doing this and this. And another one of my mentors kind of came up with this, you know, kind of this wording of, it was called RLS, release, lengthen, strengthen. And it's the terms are a little outdated, but I still like that framework where let's go in and try to get the tissue as healthy as possible. So say you're dealing with, like I said, a knee. Let's look at all the tissue around it, because if you go and you have a lot of scar tissue, a lot of trigger points, a lot of, you know, excess tension, it's going to be really hard to do strengthening on top of that.
Yeah.
So we might spend 4 sessions doing all types of manual therapy. And then underneath that is, you know, lots of different things, all different types of tools and different inputs. And then after that, let's see if we can get this tissue like lengthened, right? We want to get it hydrated. So that might be more like mobility and stretching. And then the final piece of the puzzle is usually the strength piece. And in especially in the world of like physical therapy, sometimes depending on where you go, sometimes those steps are skipped. Sometimes they go right to strengthening, where they might get improvements, but if you still have tissue quality that's kind of crappy, you're not going to get you're not building that good groundwork, that good, you know, basement of the house. And then at the same time, you could be going to some amazing massage therapists, chiropractors, manual therapists, and they can get you to a certain point, but it's like, now we need to strengthen that, right? So what I've been able to do under my licenses and certifications, I can work on all those things. The last piece of it that I've just added recently, because I was seeing it's like the body's good, but the mindset, right? So after, you know, studying breath work and meditation, I came upon this program called the Enlifted Method, which is a mindset training program where we work with clients. So that piece of it now I can add in with people. So we're talking about, you know, the definition we use in the Enlifted Method of mindset is simply the story you tell yourself. So if you're an athlete and you're getting all the best care and whatnot, but then you're going home and you're like, oh man, I'm still hurting, I'm injured, I'm in pain. Like, you have to clear that in some way. So adding that dimension to it has been a game changer. And
Yeah.
now there's a piece. So like, I actually ran this by, because this is how I roll. When I went through this whole year-long process, the first couple people I contacted were actually psychologists that I knew. And I said, I want to do 2 things. I want to take you through this program, but then I also want to make sure that I'm within my scope of practice, because we're not doing therapy, right? We're not doing cognitive behavioral therapy. We're not doing these things. And hands down, they were like, not only are you within your scope, I said, this is stuff that we can't do there. We don't have time to get into this story work and whatnot. So that's been a really great piece of it. So that's really like what I'm looking at. Because, you know, if a person comes in and they're in, you know, they're checking all the boxes, they've had great therapy, but they're still stuck, it's probably something in the story they tell themselves, right? They could be in a heavy victim mentality. They could have the imposter syndrome, stuff that, we've all had. So helping them be able to navigate through that a lot of times opens up that piece. And now it's like, boom, we've created that healing environment.
We'll be right back after a word from our partners.
After an accident, life can be scary, stressful, tricky. You need Richmond Bona to help navigate the process, because getting a life-changing settlement can not only take time, it can take an emotional toll. The team at Richmond Bona provides high levels of support through all the ins and outs, so you get the settlement you need and the new beginning you deserve.
When the unexpected happens,
expect Richmond Bona.
Now back to the conversation. That's awesome. Are you working at all with like maybe professionals, like in different environments, who are coming in and maybe what's actually holding them back from like their highest form of performance in the workplace is like this like kind of mental block or like these mental restraints? Have you explored that at all?
Just a little bit. I'm a little self-silo just because of what I do, but I've actually done a couple. The cool thing about this specific work too, I actually do it via Zoom. We can do it in person, but I did a nice little Zoom, I guess, like course on this for an HR group for the HR professionals. I'd worked with a mental health group talking about that a little bit too. So, but it absolutely could be the next piece of getting that right and working through that.
Yeah, that's interesting because I see that whether it's at my firm or maybe people I talk to or work at other types of businesses where it's like the person wants to be the best version of themselves, or they say like, hey, I want to be the best trial lawyer, or I want to be the best whatever. And you can have conversations with them about whether it's like, hey, read Atomic Habits, or let's talk about it, or like, hey, like, think about what the habits are of the type of person you want to be. And you have to start adding those into your lifestyle or deleting things, right? Oftentimes, like deleting things is even more important. But for whatever reason, they're stuck. Like, it's like they know what they have to do, but they can't do it. And then usually what I see is they go back to, and I don't even mean this in like a bad way about people. Like, these are good people, but like, they're like, well, where I was before, we always did it this way, or I created these bad habits someplace else. So they just keep kind of going back to that. I don't know if you see that at all.
I see it all the time. And, one of the things, it's really what we do is based on like, what words are we using, right? So we have a series of words that we call like soft talk words, right? And it's words that we use in our daily language that often we don't even know is causing some conflict, right? So if I were to, especially like via text and stuff, if I were to say, hey, John, do you want to go get some coffee next Wednesday? A very typical response that people don't even know they're doing is, Wednesday, I could probably do that. And so my brain is like, well, probably. Like, what does that mean? Does this person really want to? So actually, one of the tools that we use is this. It's called a soft talk detox, and getting these words, kind of becoming aware of these words, and then getting them out of our language. And what it does is these words create conflict. And so by starting to get out of these words that we use all the time, we can clear some of that. And I'll give you a great example. This is actually one of the reasons why I started in this program. So I was at the facility working with athletes, and a player that had an injury, I was just in the hallway talking with a couple other guys, and he walked by, and I said, hey, how's your back pain? And the person kind of literally went from walking like this to like, oh, it's kind of okay. And I immediately was like, did I just set that off?
Yeah.
Because he wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah.
So I really started to pay attention to the words I was using. And then I was like, shit, there might be somebody that might come into my office. I might say pain like 17 times, hurting, Are you hurting? Are you in pain? And it's not that those words shouldn't be used, but I just started trying to flip the switch of like, all right, if I can change those words a little bit, like one simple thing was, are you injured? How's your injury going?
Right.
Now I say, how's your healing going?
Hmm.
And it's profound, like neurobiology that happens. It's simple but complex. So it was a big learning experience for me. And, even how I talk with, my family and, and my girls and it's like, you start with the words. Start with the words. Make sure you're using words that are not creating conflict, but they're creating a healing environment, going back to that.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. Like I'm telling you, like a lot of stuff you're talking about. It's always interesting to hear like the parallels between different industries. Like even like in our environment, like trying cases and being in front of a jury, like the psychology behind it, and the insurance industry wants to use certain terms, and then us just slightly changing the description, even though it really means the same thing, can have such a huge
Hmm.
impact on the psyche,
For
of the
sure.
person that you're talking to. That's really interesting. Um, so I would be remiss if I didn't bring up a topic that you and I have talked a lot about in the past, and I know you're very educated in psychedelic mushrooms.
Correct.
Uh, Especially in this day and age where thankfully, finally, the world is opening, their eyes and their ears and their brains and their hearts to alternate forms of medicine that maybe traditionally were, for a lot of reasons, insurance involved and a lot of other, were kind of shunned, or there's like a dark shadow cast over it. Um, can you kind of talk a little bit about your research there and your thoughts on psychedelic mushrooms, whether it pertains to healing or mindset, recovery, that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, and even to lump that into a bigger is really, entheogenics, all the different things, all the different plants, and even things like MDMA and things that are made in the lab. You know, First off, like especially the true plant medicines, they've been here for thousands of years. They've been used in ceremonies for thousands of years. Unfortunately, um, when the research was happening with these, they were making unbelievable research with things like LSD, MDMA, psilocybin mushrooms, and they got cut down starting at the Nixon administration. Not only did they put a stranglehold on this, they made it a Schedule One drug, which is almost impossible to get researched on. And
Hmm.
if you look at, there's amazing studies up until kind of the 70s, and it just stopped. It stopped cold. And unfortunately, through that, it's been there's been a lot of there's been a lot of people that have been harmed, I think, because the wheel stopped rolling. Um, it's starting up again, which is really great. I was actually just talking with a veteran this morning. Also, too, a lot of this work that I do with the mindset stuff, I do it entirely pro bono with veterans
Wow,
because
that's
of its
awesome.
importance. And we were talking about, this person is suffering from, PTSD, alcohol, they're chronic, cannabis smokers all day, every day. And just talking about some of the research that's out there. Are you familiar with ibogaine?
I've heard of it. I'm not like super familiar, but I've heard of it. I've heard a lot of it,
So
especially recently.
iboga it's a shrub from Africa, and it is a Schedule One drug. Now, I have not done ibogaine, but it is not a recreational drug. Like, it is a medicine. It is a 24-hour harrowing trip through your psyche. And the studies that had just came out about it is showing that after one ceremony session, whatever container you want to put it in, there's an 80% cure rate of addiction, PTSD, and medication resistant addiction. 80% after one session. After a second session, the number goes up into the 90s. This is I mean, the fact that legal narcotics that people are addicted to that you have to go down to Mexico to do an illegal plant to get you unaddicted of the legal medicine is so fucked up.
Oh,
Is so
yeah.
fucked up. And that's really been the truth for a lot of these things, no matter what it is, if it's something like MDMA or something like a mushroom that can help, it's been clamped down. And if you want to go down a rabbit hole, there's some interesting talks about why they were taken off, because it was really part of the anti-war movement. So you have all these hippies that are, taking LSD and mushrooms, and it's peace, love, and hug your neighbor. That does not make for good soldiers.
Nope.
That does not make for a population that is a war population. And if you dig deep enough, you'll find that was most likely the reason why they put all of these on a Schedule 1 drug. Now,
Yeah.
not everybody should be doing psychedelics.
Yeah.
There are dangers to them. Some are more than others. But it's nice to have the conversation of people that are going through, and I've had people come to me and asking me, hey, can you, guide me through, a mushroom ceremony or something like that. And, if they're taking SSRIs and things like that, the answer is always, respectfully, no. But let's get you in touch with some people that can maybe get you in a position to be able to do that. So again, the same thing is I'm really trying to help guide people into the right framework to do it safely, because there are some safety issues with it.
Yeah, for sure. You got to be careful, right? And, but under the right guidance, it's like, let's use everything that, Mother Nature is giving us and
Absolutely.
say, like, let's try to get people to be the optimal versions of themselves, to, like you said, get rid of PTSD, to get rid of pain, like to be in a better space. And if it can be done safely, it's kind of crazy that there's still forces out there trying to prevent that. I mean, I think we know why.
For sure.
But
Yeah,
it's crazy.
for sure. I mean, and like I said, and this story is very true. We could talk this about peptides. We could talk to this about these naturally occurring compounds. Follow the money usually gets us to where you want to go. Things are changing, which is really great. Now there's actually therapists that are training to be able to do work with these people. They've had some programs go into like, end phase FDA trials, which is pretty amazing. And again, it's like, it's all part of this container. And people that have come to me and just said, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to do an ayahuasca ceremony in this. And look, that's great. First off, let's make sure that the person or people you're working with are safe, that they're, they know what they're doing. But then it's like, let's also make sure that this isn't necessarily the end game. Like, let's talk about getting your body back to shape. Like with this veteran I talked about is, I was like, we need to create that healing environment. So let's talk about getting you into a good place mentally. Let's change your nutrition. Let's get you moving. Let's drink some water. So it's all, to me, about like fostering this. And that's why like the integration piece is really important. So some of this mindset work I do, people that have gone and done different ceremonies, ayahuasca and things, I'll actually work with them doing this as their pre and post integration. So I don't have anything to do with the actual ceremony, but we talk about how we can help integrate what they learned through that and then carry it on.
Yeah, it's really important. And actually it's funny. So when I walked in today, Brett, who's sitting over here right now, is wearing a hoodie. He takes his hoodie off and I'm looking at him and he's got a shirt on that says LSD, which he alleges are the initials of a band. But we're going to have a conversation later on about this. I was like, that's very appropriate. You probably don't even know what I'm going to talk to Matt about.
Right.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I think it's just, there's so many healing. Personally, I've had some amazing, and listen, I've been playing around with psychedelics, for, probably 30 years. And, first it was more recreationally, but then as I started to do some of my work, I've had some really unbelievable breakthroughs with using psychedelics on a personal level, but I was also a little bit older and I was coming into it like, there's work to be done here,
Right.
and I've gone to retreats locally, and sometimes you'll get invited to these little ceremonies and you have no idea who's coming. I've been in the space with doctors, lawyers, executives, and it's like, you're sharing, you're going around, and they're like, I want to be a better person. I want to be able to get rid of this giant ego on my back. And, husband and wives, it's been pretty cool to kind of see see it. Unfortunately, it's kind of done in secret still a little
Yeah.
bit. It's changing, but I think that as long as, the big corporations if they stay out of it, because they're already trying to get their hands on it.
Oh yeah.
I think it'll be unbelievable. I mean, if you listen to any Sean Ryan, Rogan, all these guys, these tier one special ops guys, man, like they've gone down this path. They've been using these because they've been on multiple medications, and veteran suicide is out of control. I think there's like over almost 20,000 veteran suicides a year, which is more than we lose in war.
That's horrible.
And, they're going to Brazil, they're going to Mexico, they're going to all these places. And it's like, let's build some containers here where we can do it safely and get our men and women the help that they need.
Yeah, I agree. So let me
And also,
take you-
too, I don't mind eating a couple mushrooms and chilling by the fire either.
I was gonna say
That's good medicine.
There's other benefits too. Yeah, exactly.
That's good
A lot better than drinking.
Absolutely.
No recommendations are being made on this podcast.
No
but-
recommendations.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Drugs
so
are really expensive.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So what are your personal daily habits like? Like what are things that are non-negotiable? Because like now, especially people who are really interested in the health and wellness space, you're hearing, things about like light therapy and grounding and sauna, and there's a lot of different things, right? And they all have their place. But like for you, are there like non-negotiables or things that you do every day?
Yeah, and I have all those tools. I have a sauna, I have a cold plunge, I have grounding mats. I sometimes, and this is what happens in kind of the industry, is you can almost get your daily like protocol becomes this like monster, and it's like, man, if I didn't get my 40 minutes of my daily practice in, it's like I'm going to be screwed. So then
Let me tell you something real quick. I don't want to interrupt you. A big thing in like the CEO training world now, like these things I go to or these masterminds I'm part of, the heads of these groups will come out and be like, let me show you my daily routine.
Yeah.
It is insane. Like they're spending literally 4 or 5 hours on this routine a day. And then talking to people like us who I'm like, dude, I can't even afford half of the stuff that you are saying that you use. Yeah. But anyways, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
go ahead. In a perfect day, like getting up and depending on, it's been beautiful weather here, is, going outside. So I'm a big nerd on like sunshine and light, as you can tell by my shirt. I have some amazing mentors in the field that have, broke open some of this, and, it's being able to go outside, get some natural light first. If it's nice outside, no shoes, I chill in the grass, let my dog run around. I really try to get that morning sunlight in. That's my first thing. And then, the nutrition, I eat like a Paleolithic diet. I get a lot of my food from local farms, bison, beef, chicken, eggs. I know my farmers. When I go to the markets and stuff, they're like, hey, Matt, what's going on? I have a chest freezer with food, and then, a movement practice, whether that's strength training. I do jujitsu, I do Muay Thai, I do yoga, getting some type of a movement practice in every day. And then some type of, if I'm doing either some breath work, so I'll spend 5 minutes doing some breathing work or just some simple journaling that I'll do. That's in a perfect day, and all those things, the red lights, they're great, and when it's winter time, those are some good things. But if I don't get in my cold plunge for, 14 minutes at 47 degrees or hit the sauna, because life gets busy. And what happens is you want to set yourself up for success. So it's like, you know what? I think about like, if I can check a couple of these things every day, but really it's like being in as much natural light as possible. So I've changed a lot of like the light bulbs that I use and little things like that, low hanging fruit that we can do. And also too, like trying to be not connected to this thing.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
that's huge.
my entire business, I run everything off of that phone. Everything, scheduling, taking payments, doing research. So being able to set that aside and like spending time with the family, and just doing those things, being present, to me, those are the non-negotiables. And then, hey, maybe there's a day I check all those boxes and I got a mobility session in, I went to jujitsu, I did cold plunge. It's like, hey, I'm awesome. I ate a giant steak. I'm like, I'm good to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, for somebody listening who's like, "Hey, I just need to break the cycle of whatever I'm doing, whether it's work or I'm going out too much or whatever it is." Well, what are like maybe like you talk about low-hanging fruit, like three things that somebody could just start integrating into like their week or their day to sort of start getting on the right path to feeling better?
So we go back, there's these like foundation principles, right? That I learned from, like I said, one of my mentors, Paul Check. And so it's like, first off, like your thoughts and your words, right? What kind of thoughts are you having when you wake up? You wake up in the morning and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, like I have this, and this. How can you re-regulate that a little bit? So maybe that is the night before, writing down your to-do list, and then going back to the words. But then it's like, okay, sleep. Am I going to bed at 12:30 after being on my phone for 2 hours and then waking up at 5 to go to my CrossFit class? That's going to end bad. I've seen it end bad. So quality sleep. Water. Like I read a study a while back, like 70% of Americans are dehydrated clinically.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So good quality water. Buy yourself a water filter. Like you can get them from $100 to $4,000. Good quality water. Keep a bottle with you. And then, what kind of foods are we eating? And there's a whole diet, army. It's like, I always tell people, just start with trying to eat whole foods, less synthetic foods. Try to eat vegetables, proteins, things that our body really is used to taking, good quality fats. And then your movement practice too. With a lot of the people that I work with, a lot of them are overtrained.
Yeah.
They're doing too much. So there's this thing we call like working out and working in. So for every workout that you do, what's a working in practice? And that could be, for me, sometimes it's walking around, walking the dog in the block, no headphones and just breathing. That's a work in. What is your social media feed filled with? During COVID, I did this. I was like, my social media feed, every time I go on there, I'm looking at all these conspiracy theorists, which I love reading, but I was like, this is not working right now. So it's like, curate your feed to make sure that that's good. Turn off the news.
You can reset it, by the way. I did that the other day. Like you literally reset the algorithm and then start curating it to like positivity,
For
health
sure.
and wellness, things you want to see.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's super important. Yeah.
And just kind of like, again, create that, like, so you have that around you. And the more you do of that, the more it's going to be better. Making sure that if you're going to be working in an office 10 hours a day, that you take 20 minutes the day before and make some healthy food.
100%.
And you bring it with you. Keeping like stupid stuff. Like when I was really grinding with teams and working with athletes 12, 13 hours a day, like I got stuck into that habit. I was like, I'd bring a cooler and make sure I had some healthy snacks with me. You got to set yourself up, and the ROI with that is it takes a little bit of time. I had a professional athlete yesterday, lacrosse player, and she had told me, and she's young, that she does like no recovery stuff. She does no foam rolling, no stretching. So I said, here's what you're going to do. 10 minutes before you go to bed every night, what are you usually doing? Oh, I'm on my phone. Now you're going to foam roll. Simple, right? Just simple basic stuff that you can start with. Again, creating that environment.
Awesome. Yeah.
Grab books that are good, like put them around you, curate your life to be in a good situation.
Yeah. Awesome advice. Well, look, man, like I'm definitely, as you know, I teased it. We're building out a studio and we're going to bring everybody in person. I'm going to have you back so we can spend a lot more time diving into this. I could talk to you for hours, but, if someone wants to find you, they want to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
So my website is revivewny.com. All my contact info is on there. If you go on Instagram, my Instagram handle is Matt Meyer 911. You can send me a DM or something like that. But all my information, my phone's on there, my email, very easy to contact me. I'm really good about returning. I get back to people usually within a few hours of contact, and don't even feel, you could be like, I have no money to work with you. Call me, reach out, because I can help you maybe find a solution or put you in a position that you can be around people that can maybe help you with whatever that is. Like I said, my electronic Rolodex is bursting at the seams with amazing practitioners.
Awesome. And he means it. Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
All right, brother.
It's awesome. Thanks for listening to Angles. If this episode made you think, smile, or see something in a new way, follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a review and share it with friends. You can also follow us on social media. Angles is produced by Brett Tuttle. I'm John Richmond. See you next time.